Before 1939, global trade, vast colonial empires, and international politics were strictly controlled by a handful of European powers. The United States, meanwhile, intentionally remained isolated across the Atlantic. Following the First World War, the victorious European nations built the League of Nations to lock in this status quo and manage global security on their own terms. But without American backing or a unified military force, the League lacked actual leverage. It was a diplomatic body trying to reason with rising, aggressive fascist dictatorships throughout the 1930s. The architects of this system thought they had engineered a lasting peace. In reality, they had constructed a fragile illusion. Desperate to avoid another horrific conflict, Britain and France relied on a policy of appeasement. They offered land and political concessions to fascist leaders, hoping to satisfy their demands. Instead of containing the threat, these concessions proved to Hitler that the Western democracies were paralyzed, emboldening his territorial ambitions. On September 1, 1939, German forces crossed the border into Poland, physically dismantling the remaining diplomatic framework. This invasion was the point of no return. Europe was plunging into a conflict that would eventually dismantle its own global reach. The previous war was defined by unmoving trenches. This one was dictated by blitzkrieg, a rapid, mechanized assault designed to overwhelm and bypass traditional defenses. The results were immediate. France, a massive global military power, fell in just 6 weeks. The fighting soon moved past the front lines. Over 8 months, London was relentlessly bombed from the air, flattening thousands of homes and commercial centers. In the east, the conflict turned into a grim war of attrition. Millions of Soviet and German soldiers fought street by street through the ruins of cities like Stalingrad. The conflict was systematically vaporizing Europe's physical cities, economic foundations, and future industrial capacities. On the morning of December 7, 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor abruptly dragged a reluctant United States into the fight. America entered the conflict with a massive geographic advantage. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans acted as defensive moats, keeping the U.S. mainland protected from the aerial bombings devastating European and Asian cities. Free from the threat of enemy fire, the U.S. pivoted to become the arsenal of democracy. Factories retooled and ran day and night. Millions of Americans went to work building warships, planes, and weapons. The sheer volume of this output ended the Great Depression and built the most powerful industrial engine on Earth. The conflict created a brutal paradox. It bankrupted and leveled the historic empires of Europe while simultaneously turbocharging the United States economy. By 1945, the deployment of atomic weapons forced the war to an immediate halt. But the deployment signaled a new reality. The United States now held absolute military power. Compare that peak strength to the former powers. Across the Atlantic, the historic centers of global influence were reduced to rubble. This physical and economic exhaustion broke Europe's grip on its overseas territories. A massive geopolitical vacuum opened up as independence movements rapidly swept through the colonies. The old hierarchy was gone. Europe lacked the capital to maintain its empires or rebuild its own cities. The globe was a blank slate, waiting for someone to underwrite the recovery. This chart shows the 1945 U.S. GDP towering over the fragmented output of Britain, France, and Germany combined. America stepped into the vacuum. Instead of propping up the colonial system, the U.S. exported its own framework, tying European rebuilding directly to the American dollar. By late 1945, this new reality was institutionalized. The League of Nations was replaced by the United Nations, hosted right in New York City. Unlike the previous era, this diplomatic center was backed by a global network of American-led military alliances. Europe would never dictate international security alone again. The defeat of fascism coincided with the permanent dismantling of the European imperial system, shifting the global center across the Atlantic and establishing the American superpower status we recognize today.